A village is not just limited to our friends and family. A lot of the time, your village may be made up of people you don't consider your friends, but they are part of your community. They're part of people who provide support to you. They're part of people who brighten your day, lighten your load, and in some way enrich your life. Today's video is building this. It's building our community that is made up of, yes, family and friends and how they become our village and not just people in our lives, but also the consideration of people we may not consider our friends. And in some cases, it isn't about establishing something new, but rather recognizing what you have, leaning into it, establishing different dynamics within that relationship. I'm going to share lots of tips and wisdom that I have been given and read and experienced, and I'm also going to share my story as somebody who literally re-established a village from scratch when we moved to a new country and I was 5 months pregnant at the time. This video is me sharing because I think that what I'm going to share is valuable for other people, but it's also reminders for me, because an establishing of true community and in a village is not a once-off event. It is something continuous, and we go through cycles in life, and there are phases where I feel very much outward and social and wanting to create more connection with people and put myself out there. And then there are other phases, like pregnancy, which is a lot more of an internal phase. It's a lot more of a phase of, especially towards the end, protecting your space, your pregnancy and postpartum and birth and all of that. While it's maybe a more internal space, it's not an isolated one. And that's what's happened in a lot of cases in our society. It has gone from internal to isolation of women feeling very alone. It is not necessarily a very social phase, but it is a phase that is so enriched and so powerful when we have community in that, and when we allow for that community to grow and we allow people in to be our village. Now, just a little bit of real talk quickly about the concept of a village. I hear things where people express ways that they are disempowered in their life, or they have to compromise on things, or they're not living their best life because, and I quote now, "This used to be done by a village and people used to have a village and now we don't have that anymore." There's two uncomfortable and powerful things that I want to share to that. The first one is, it is so possible to live your best, most empowered life while you don't yet have a village and you are still busy establishing that, and it will come in time. But you do not have to wait to have that in order to live the life that you want. And that feels good to you, and that feels like you have choice and you have options and you have things that you can do. And the second thing is, yeah, we don't live in huts anymore as people in our small community village of your women and your wise women and your family. Everybody is very scattered all over the world. People live a lot more like isolated in their nuclear family homes. And we don't as a civilization, not a lot of people, some people still have that, but it is our responsibility to cultivate that and to create that and establish that in our lives. It's something that we can and should take full ownership of, not in a way of shaming ourselves because we don't have it, not in a way that's stressful, in a way this is so life enriching. And it is, by the way. You're probably watching this because you want to establish a village, but maybe there are some people who act like they don't need a village and they don't want a village. I think that everybody should have a village. I think that it makes people's lives more wonderful. Yes, it comes with complexities because relationships and people are complex, but just because it's not necessarily easy all the time does not mean it's a bad thing. It is so important for who we are as people to have community and to have village. And that is what today's video is all about. The first part about how I spoke about you can live your most wonderful life with choice and feeling empowered. That part, subscribe to my channel because I do have lots of other videos where I talk about ways that I do that when I don't have a village and I do live incredibly far from any of my family members. I moved to a country where we did not have a single friend. And it does take time to establish those things. And even when I establish them, there are still parts that I just don't have, living so far from my family and friends that I've had for my whole life. So the building village and how I did this. We moved here 3 years ago. Not a single friend, not a single family member. I was 5 months pregnant, and not once did I worry about the fact that he did not have a village and he did not have friends. I knew that with intentional behaviors, that would come. And while I didn't have it, I planned. I planned and I prepared. I planned for our home birth. I made sure that I got what I needed to in terms of resources and support, even if I had to get a little bit more creative about it. I planned and I prepared to honor the first 40 days, which is not a very usual concept in the Western world. And it is something that a lot of people see as a luxury, where it should be a necessity, and they believe that they can't do it because they don't have the village that people used to have when they did it. I had zero village, and also we had moved to a new country where Ian started a job exactly a month before Alba was born. So we also were not flush in the finance department. We made it work despite the fact that we were meeting people that had so much more than what we did, more in terms of being established, more in terms of support, more in terms of family around them, etc. We made it work. And often I believe the secret ingredient to how to make it work is a mindset shift. To shift out of the mindset that we are a victim to our own lives and shift into the mindset that this is what we want in life. This is the kind of daily things that I want my life to look like. These are the kind of people I want in my life. This is the way that I want people in my life to show up for me. To have a mentality that says, I kind of know what I want and I can envision it and I can make it happen. And I, through my intentional behaviors over time, this is not a thing that you establish like tomorrow, you can build this. You can build your community that feels so wonderful for you. So my first tip to establishing our village and our community, there's gonna be a whole lot of balance. It's the balance between the inner and the outer. The inner being our self-reflection. Are you living your life in a way where, one, people want to be around you, and two, people want to do things that enrich your life? Now, this is not a permanent state, just to be clear. I have gone through so many phases in my life where I may not have been the person that people wanted to be around. I have gone through many phases in my life where I definitely didn't give off the kind of vibe that was inviting people to want to do things that were life enriching for me. And this is not an end goal. This is something that I believe that we continuously reflect on throughout every phase of life. And it's not about being a people pleaser. It is about living our authentic life, but also being aware of ways that we are almost creating like an energy that people don't want to be around. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in this video, but I'm first gonna talk about the one that's much more prevalent, and that is where we're not establishing this environment and dynamic that makes people want to do things for us and want to do things that enrich our lives. And I have this perfect example that is so often with me when I reflect about myself and other people. And before I tell you that story, I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but this is actually my profession. I am a specialist in relationship dynamics, predominantly the employment relationship, but I have extended that to other types of relationships. So this is not just my personal share. I have actually been a practicing practitioner in this realm for many years, and put a lot of effort into always improving the knowledge and the skills and the everything that goes with it. All right, so having now established that, back to my story. I am someone, I love to do things for people. Not everything, but I really enjoy making things for people. I really enjoy thinking of ways that I can enrich their lives and what would make life more wonderful for them. And I find it very natural to want to give to people. Obviously, I have to do stuff in my life so that I am in that giving space that feels so natural to me. But One of the things that I realized, because that is my natural inclination, and I'm always like, oh, I'm gonna make this and so would love that, I should drop that off for them, or I should do this for them, is that sometimes when I have those thoughts, I have certain friends or people where I would like start that thought and then be like, no, I'm not gonna do that for them. They don't really seem like they want or need anything. And it's not that people have it all together. It's not that people are giving off this vibe that life is easy for them and therefore they don't need anything and they don't need anybody. That's not it at all. Like, it might maybe at a surface level, I guess, but it's more something that it's like a protective coping mechanism. It's like I don't want to let people do things for me. It's often people who, when you do something for them, you kind of feel like they don't appreciate it because they have this resistance to someone doing something for them, or maybe they have this mistrust that people just give from the heart and that it's beautiful to receive something from somebody because they have this almost sense of like, oh, now I have to do something for you because you did something for me. Or this idea that my giving comes at some kind of cost, therefore they can't just be open and receive it for what it is. You can quite easily, I think, pick up, have these walls that they put up around receiving and people offering support or gifts or anything really that is like life enriching for them. So it's definitely not that they have it all together. It's just that they don't really, even in times it's hard, there's not a openness to receiving. For obvious reasons, this puts people off of wanting to enter into our village when we're like this. The other reason why this is something that is a hindrance to establishing true community, a village is a reciprocal relationship. It is not a one-way thing. I am not someone who wants people in my village to be doing things for me, giving to me, but it's coming from their, and I say this with love, they're sort of like hero complex. They're sort of like savior complex. Like, oh, I do things for everybody else and I give and I give and I give, but I won't take from anybody else and I won't receive and I just give. Now, I don't enjoy that dynamic at all. With a village, with true community, we go through different phases where we are giving and receiving to different people in different ways. And now these phases, so earlier I said that some people have this thing that if you give to them, then there is this thing that comes up for them, like, oh, okay, now I have to do something for you. A village, in my opinion, or establishing dynamics that are really, that's Opa, that's Mama's Opa, that really is meaningful is when we have relationships that have long phases of different times, different people need more or less or something different. So it's not like, okay, this week I did something for you, now next week you do something for me, especially if it's a motherhood village, because then through pregnancy, through postpartum, through newborn, there's a lot more that we want to be giving to somebody in that phase, when they're in that phase of life, where in a different phase, that then is reciprocated, not in a sense of I owe this to you, but in a sense of the natural flow of relationships where we give to other people and we receive from other people.
I can read ladder.
So when we're building our village, the inner work that I'm talking about is these reflections of ourselves, and an important one is a reflection of how open we are to making life more wonderful and fully embracing that life is more wonderful when we live interdependently with other people. This is not a codependent relationship. This is not an independent relationship. We're living interdependently. And if you look at the history of our species, this is how we are able to survive, and this is how we thrive, is when we establish community and village. But often we block it by not taking ownership of our own lives, like acting like we are a victim to our own life, when despite hardships, despite circumstances, despite everything, we are not a victim to our life, and life is not happening to us. Things are happening to us, but we can still decide, this is from Viktor Frankl, how we show up in any given circumstances and anything and everything can be taken from us, but the way that we choose to show up to things. And the second thing is doing the work to heal from what is blocking us from being open to other people. So many of us, so many people have hardships, have a lot of pain around trust and reliability of other people. But here's real talk. People are not perfect. And if we continue to see them as threatening to us and we continue to see them as unreliable and not trustworthy, that's exactly what people are going to be in our lives. So there's a Brene Brown quote that I really like around having a soft, open front and a strong back. So many of us carry these wounds around how people have let us down and how we trusted them, and we have a lot of pain around that. Just because I'm choosing not to share deeply personal things to my own life does not mean that I don't know what that feels like and that I don't have those same things that have happened in my life and things that I had to work through. But that's the thing, is we need to work through it, because it does not serve us to carry that pain. It doesn't serve us to build up these walls around ourselves because several people in our lives did things that were incredibly hurtful, put our trust in places, and it hurt like hell to do that, and then we become very afraid to do more of that. But that fear of pain and that fear is blocking us from having wonderful relationships with people and blocking us from being open to other people. And the real talk is, people are nuanced. It's not personal. And I think a lot of our pain comes from the expectations that we had of people. And we had a lot of expectations and thoughts around how somebody should be and how they should treat us. Okay. But we are all human beings, and all of us, as much as we may have been hurt by somebody breaking our trust or being unreliable, I can probably guarantee you that there might be people in your life who can say that about you at a certain phase that you went through, because we are human. And if we don't allow other people space to be human, then it's also not really allowing space for us to be human. We don't need to be perfect. That's why strong back, open front, allow for humanness, allow for nuance, allow people to be imperfect and heal from the times that we were hurt, so that we don't block out everybody continuing to feed our narrative that every time somebody doesn't do exactly what they said they were going to do, like, oh yes, people are unreliable, I can't trust anybody but myself. That is a narrative that keeps us separate from people, and it does not serve us in life. And yes, it was beautiful at some point, protected us when we needed it, but it does not serve us to live in that state as our permanent state and our permanent approach to the world. Next thing, and this is a big one, is this is so prevalent. And this is where we expect one or two people to be our whole village and their everything. Usually how this will play out for people is their spouse and their mother. So those are the two people that they will expect should be their entire village and fulfill all of the roles that used to be fulfilled by many different people in a village. Now this concept, the spouse one, but I've extended it to mothers and enter in there whoever else someone usually picks to be their everything. It comes from Esther Perel's Mating in Captivity, where we expect our spouse to fulfill literally every role, from being our lover, our business partner, our finance partner, our partner in life, our co-parent, our best friend, our empathy provider, you name it. We're expecting from one person. This, as beautiful as somebody's marriage will be, and to say that their spouse is their everything, it is not a sustainable way for us to live our best life, to expect of one or two people to fulfill so much in our lives, even if they are able to a lot of the time. Now this was something that I theoretically understood for a very long time. I read Mating in Captivity many years ago. It wasn't something that I truly embodied. My husband and I moved to a new country, literally just the two of us. Although I theoretically knew that this dynamic is not the best for me, for him, and just for life in general, it wasn't something that I was fully living until we moved here. And then a little bit into us having moved here and having just had a baby, my husband got sick and he could no longer fulfill the roles that he used to fulfill, or the roles that I was expecting him to fulfill in my life. And this is when I started to really embody that I really need to establish community in person, but also through people that I keep in contact with via video calls and so forth, where I am turning to that relationship to meet needs that I previously only turned to my spouse for, or expected majority of the time that they fulfill that role for me. And through doing that, it was incredibly life enriching for me, for him, and for our marriage. Now that he is all healed up, our dynamic and our life is so much more wonderful because I now established a baseline where he fulfills so much in my life and he's so vitally important to my life, but there isn't that pressure on him anymore. And it's not an obvious pressure, but it's something that we subliminally do when we live in these like nuclear homes, build our walls up, and we have our like tiny little family, and the only person who ever sees you being real and vulnerable is your spouse. Then we do create that dynamic, whether it was intentional or not. Now, through us having gone through everything that we've been through, I am finally getting to live out what I theoretically knew was important and also amazing. And it's not just amazing just for us, but it's also good for the people that we then turn to, because when we are turning to our friendships to fulfill more roles in our life, we are extending an invitation to take that relationship to a deeper level, to turn it from a superficial small talk relationship where we say we're there for each other and we offer advice, to one where it's real and it is actually turning to that person with real raw vulnerability that doesn't always look pretty, but it is us being very real and very open that somebody else may provide support to us. And then also through having that, where we're turning to other people, again, not just one person, because it's a lot of pressure if we're putting it on one person, but we're freeing up space where if somebody in any given day doesn't have the capacity to show up for us in the way that we are wanting them to show up for us. I think there's that analogy when you go to the hardware store, when you're really needing something very soft and very inviting. So to be able to, at different points, extend an invitation to somebody, but also allow for their humanness, that they may not always be readily available or have the capacity to fulfill that role for us. So by creating a larger community, we're creating space where we have our needs fulfilled, but they are not coming at putting a lot of pressure, unreasonably so, ourselves to be human, and we allow space for other people to be human, and we allow space for dynamics that are not so rigid and they're not so feels like so heavy in our lives, yet they are so real, they are so authentic, and they are so life enriching. So this is the balance that I spoke of earlier in this video. It's the balance of putting ourselves out there into the world. I'm gonna talk a lot more about the practicalness of actually like how do you find these people and how do you move this relationship from just like friendly small talk to actually being something that it has a lot more substance to it. And then the balance of the inner work, because it's not just about having people in our lives, it's about the quality of the relationships in our lives. In the Anxious Generation book, he speaks about what has happened in the world as a result of like online communities and social media and all of those things. And one of the things that I took from it is he spoke about a concept, and I'm extending it further than what he was applying it to, where with online communities and in our modern world, there's a very low barrier to entry to a lot of communities, and there's a very low barrier to exit as well. So you kind of like join a community, if somebody says something you don't like or doesn't sit well with you, just leave it, or you get like kicked off of the group or whatever. But it's very easy to get in, and it's also very easy to get out of those groups. So low barrier to entry, low barrier to exit. Now what we rob ourselves of when we have this, and when we turn to this as our almost like pseudo community, is that good quality, life enriching relationships, they actually take time and effort and energy to grow. They are not comfortable all the time, and they are not just about leaving when we experience discomfort or hardship, and they are not just about like a quick, okay, now we're BFFs from the get-go, and then, oh, you do something I don't like, okay, bye, we're no longer going to be friends, we're no longer going to be part of our community. So it's establishing relationships that might have a stronger barrier to entry. It might take a while to establish the type of quality relationship that we are looking for. It might not be as easy as just joining like a Facebook group. We're just talking about Facebook groups though, because they have their very meaningful place. But it's also one we're establishing where we don't just run for the hills, like when things are a bit uncomfortable. And what's important about this is it's not just about that relationship. Like often people will think, oh, but it's not worth it for me to make it work with this relationship, or this person is doing this, this, and this that I don't really like, therefore it's like completely fine for me to leave the relationship. It's not just about that person. It's also what is happening is a good time for us to reflect on dynamics that we were a part of establishing. Relationships are a two-way thing. So that dynamic, whatever was created there, that was not created by one person. And it serves us to be uncomfortable. And it serves us to have awkward conversations and learn to set, and I hate using this word because I feel like it's been so misused in society these days, but I'm going to use it anyway. But it teaches us how to set boundaries in a way that is compassionate. The way that boundaries were meant to be set, in the sense that a boundary used to be set so that we can continue a relationship. It was talking about our preferences, where these days they're put up as walls to shut people out every time somebody acts in a way that we feel they don't like. I'm a bit of a, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I call it being intentional and conscious, but I make some choices that are contrary to the norm. And when I'm a part of groups where people make those choices that are contrary to the norm, a lot of the complaining that may come from it is how family member so-and-so doesn't agree with them, family so-and-so made some comments about them wanting to homeschool their kids, you know, friend so-and-so like made a comment about this. That's okay. People don't have to agree with us, and it's actually really good for us to have community where people share our values, share our approach, we can share ideas. As someone who is a regular, do things differently to the norm, I know the value of having people in my village who share some of those interests, who share some of those choices, because it's very life enriching for me to soundboard ideas, to chat to them about it. But our village and our community should not be limited to people who agree with everything that we do. It is very valuable for us to grow as people, to have in our lives people who don't share our views and who don't share our choices. And they don't have to agree with us. And it is really valuable for us to learn how to manage dynamics and relationships in a way where they can flourish and we do not necessarily agree on different things. It doesn't serve us as people to have a community solely based off of people who agree with everything that we do, or if they don't agree, they're not allowed to mention it. They're not allowed to bring it up, they're not allowed to talk about it, they're not allowed to have their personal preferences anywhere near our lives. That's not a real relationship, and that's not good for anybody to have that type of relationship. Does it make things easier? I guess in the short term. There's a quote that I absolutely love around how in relationships we will often avoid short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. It is important that we learn to have uncomfortable conversations. It is important that we learn to hear opinions and people talking about our choices where they don't agree with it, and not take it personally, and not get so wound up by it, and not feel like we're not able to move through that constructively, because all of these things are learned things. I don't want everybody in my life to agree with everything that I do. I don't mind when people make comments about the choices that I've made in my life. I want people to be entitled to be their own person in the relationship that we have, and not be so afraid to say anything for fear that I'm going to take offense to everything that they say. Now, the quality of connection that we establish matters, and how we have a better connection with people is the inner work, and then the outer work of having conversations that are not always easy to have. So the inner work here is, if we are offended by everything and we expect everybody to agree with everything that we do, and somebody is never allowed to say anything, and anything that somebody says we take personally, that's something that we can work on, because that is not a fun time to be around. I remember that I once described it as, there was someone in my life where I felt like I was walking through a field of landmines, and I just never knew if I was going to step on a bomb. And that's really not something most of us would want in a relationship. Is I don't want to feel like I'm spending an entire conversation trying to avoid the things that set somebody else off. And that's the kind of work that we can do ourselves. And now the outer work that we do is having conversations, authentic conversations, where we stay true to ourselves in the light of people saying and doing things that may not work, and to have conversations about changing dynamics in relationships where, yeah, those conversations are sometimes awkward and really scratchy, but they're worth having. And you might be sitting there thinking like, yeah, okay, we like that theoretically, but you don't really do it. As someone who is literally a specialist in conflict and negotiation, and that has been my profession, is I literally get hired to go into high conflict scenarios, to negotiate, to find agreement, to deal with that situation. And my way of work has been around conflict. For me, in personal relationships, that does not come naturally. Now, I blame it on my culture and where I come from, but this is probably true for a lot of people's culture and where they come from. I am from Afrikaans descendants, and the culture is very sweep it under the rug. You don't talk about it, and when you talk about things, you talk about them in a passive aggressive way, kind of like hint in the direction of the person, as opposed to having a direct conversation about different things. And I'm actually sure this is not unique to my culture, but that was the culture, the dominant culture that I was raised in, is like, it's not appropriate to talk directly about your needs and the dynamic of relationships and ways to change it and things that you would like to be different. So a lot of us do not find it to be natural, and therefore we think because it's not natural, we're not supposed to be doing it. But that's the thing, is like we often create this identity around what is natural to us and therefore not natural, so we don't do the things that don't come easy to us. But they're worth doing. These things are uncomfortable, but uncomfortable is not bad. A lot of the times that you can manage these types of conversations in a way that you walk away from it and the relationship is enriched. And this takes skill, and it takes practice, and it takes a willingness and an openness in those conversations and in changing the dynamic. Doesn't have to be this like huge intervention, sit down kind of thing. It can literally be like a small thing that you just kind of shift, and then suddenly the relationship is like blooming. I've spoken a lot in this video about the inner work that we can do and the relationship dynamics that come from it, which I think are literally critical to establishing a community that is actually life enriching for us. And as you heard, it's a lot of doing it with the relationships you already have. But now I would just like to actually chat about the physical part of like, where do we find community? Like physically and practically. So the first one, and it's gonna be a weird one because I'm gonna talk about it like establishing a physical community, but it's actually a virtual community / physical community, is your community Facebook groups. As in the area where you live, try to narrow it down as little as possible. So for me, it's literally like the neighborhood that I live in and like a few of the surrounding neighborhoods. That community group. In South Africa, I had it for the apartment complex that we lived in, was very large. There was a WhatsApp group and a Facebook group dedicated to that estate on its own there. Then there are also community groups related to the town or the city that you live in, which are sometimes a little bit large, but still the groups are around having physical proximity. So it's a virtual group, but with people who live in a physically close proximity to what you live in. And another one of those is your buy nothing group. So I don't know if this is a thing in many countries. I only knew about it when we moved here. Our buy nothing group is a really wonderful, it's literally just for like our neighborhood and like 2 other ones. Yeah. So what is so wonderful about these groups is that it is virtual. It's a way to like virtually connect to people, but often resulting in like physical things that play out in your physical real world. So examples of how this has been a part of my community or grown my village is I found Elba's Place Sitter on our community group, and it's been like over a year. So you establish a relationship with that person, you establish a relationship with their family, and through that we have just tons of stuff for each other because you see each other regularly, you talk, you know about each other's lives. So this is not somebody that you would necessarily consider a traditional friend, but they are part of your village and your community. There's other things like the Buy Nothing group. The sheer number of things that we've been given or received from that Buy Nothing group is amazing, especially for someone like me who really is not into consumerism and would rather love for something in my home to go get a second life or to receive something from that has been in somebody else's home rather than to purchase something new. Is like my favorite group in the world is this like Buy Nothing group, and the sense of community with it is just amazing. Like people really just giving to other people is just like so wonderful to see. If you want to feel good about humanity again, a group like that makes you feel really good about people. We've been given stuff like my maternity wear because I got so tired of buying stuff and then it didn't really work out for me, and I asked on there and literally somebody gave me 5 pairs of amazing maternity pants because I asked on there. We have received a running stroller from the group, and the person who gave it to us said, yeah, somebody gave it to me, so now I'm giving it to you. When you're done with it, you can give it away. And it's just like such and it's like, it's a nice running stroller, you know? It's something that along the way somebody definitely could have made some money selling it, but we're kind of creating this train of just giving it away, taking good care of it, and then just hand it on to the next person. And this is what communities would have been, you know, back in the day. It's just people giving things to each other. They use it for a period of time when it serves them, and then you hand it over when you're done with it. And then there's other stuff, like somebody posted on there, we buy those like carbon gas canisters for SodaStream, and the person was like, hey, I want to place an order, but I need like a minimum to do this order, and then it works out like so much cheaper and so forth. And we get quite a few canisters at a time, so we would by ourselves be able to make that minimum order every couple of months. But it's such a nice thing to do with other people. So now when I place that order, I will say, hey, I'm placing this order. If there's anybody else that would like to add it up, just come drop your canister like at my house and pick it up when the new ones have been dropped off. That way they're getting canisters for cheaper, and there's a sense of community, and it's in the area that they live in, so it's really convenient for them. The people that I'm doing this with are not my friends. I don't have a friendship type relationship with them, but we are doing things together that save us money, that save us time, and they still feel really nice in terms of your community. So that's one way where I think like social media has a lot of things that we need to protect ourselves from when it comes to social media. Because there's a lot of things that is incredibly harmful and robs us of real relationships. So I am part of the final generation. I was like that last generation that grew up without social media, and social media only came about when I was already through my adolescent development, so therefore it does not have like a substantial impact on the way that my brain developed, but you get to then use it as an extension of your real life and not as a replacement of your real life. And that's something that we need to be mindful of, because we can sometimes replace real life connection with what is like a pseudo community. And there's beautiful ways to use social media, putting in like little protections. So one of the beautiful ways that I believe that I use social media is through having virtual communities that are orientated or in some way related to my physical community. And sometimes they have to, especially when it's like something that's pretty niche, be quite large. I'm on some groups where I have like a very niche interest where the whole group is like the whole of Canada, and then there's other ones like barefoot shoes, which because again it's like a little bit niche, it's like Alberta. But through being on the Alberta Facebook group, this last weekend we went to a barefoot community meetup in Calgary where we socialized with other people that have an interest in this, and you swap shoes and all of that. My big thing is to join Facebook groups where you have like a shared interest or you are within physical proximity to each other. Then the next one is more friendship orientated. So depending on where you live, maybe you already have established friendship or you want to grow your friendship group or whatever. So I had to establish one from scratch when we moved here. And this was not something that I worried about. I remember talking to Ian about it quite a bit when we moved here, where he was really like focused on making friends and stuff. And I was like, you know, I'm very relaxed about it because I just know that through intentional effort over time, this is something that will come. And I don't want to rush it because the quality of friendships is really important to me. I am not somebody, like it's different for different people. Like some people just like knowing lots of people and doing things with other people. Whereas like I'm a very homebound, like internal kind of person that values close relationships and doing things with people, but just like I'm not like a super social person. So for me, there was no sense of pressure to like establish lots of relationships straight out the gate of arriving here. Now how I have done that thus far, and I continue to do it because like I said, it's not something that's rushed for me. So over time, continuously establishing relationships and making friends. And a big priority with having a toddler for me with some friendships, and definitely not closed off to other types of friendships, but is establishing community for Elba. Now, one of the ways that I do this is I simply do things that are authentic to me and my interests, and I go do them outside the house. And I'm open to potentially meeting people there. And if I don't, then I already did the thing that I enjoyed doing, and I did it in a way that is authentic to me. One of the first 2 relationships that I made after we moved here was I attended like mom and baby yoga, and I would just change Elba's cloth diaper like right then and there. And other moms who were interested in cloth diapering or also did cloth diapering would see that. You'd strike up a conversation, you'd end up doing things. And a lot of the time when you have one of those interests in common, you do typically have several of those interests in common. And it doesn't mean that everything overlaps. But with this mom in particular, there is an interest in cloth diapering, which was also the shared interest in elimination communication, a shared interest in raising our children screen-free. And this is something you really want community with because it can be very lonely when you are feeling like you're the only person doing some stuff like this, and then you share. We've shared items across each other. We have done orders together, like that makes it cheaper because you share shipping, and we've done a lot of soundboarding and bouncing ideas on how to do certain things given our choice to not use a screen. Then there's been other things like that, like for example, I go to a breastfeeding meetup that's held like once a month in person. I have not had any breastfeeding questions or issues or problems. A lot of people go to those meetings for that reason. I go for community. There are baby wearing groups. There are mom hiking groups. There are mom skill sharing meetups where you can go and learn a new skill. And then there's like a group that I established from literally, I went in a Facebook group where we have similar interests, and I was like, hey, I would really like to grow my mom community. It was especially around the screen-free thing. I wanted in winter here, it's very, like we're very indoor bound as much as we try to get outdoors. And I was like, hey, I would really love to make some connections. Where I'm making connections with other parents, and through that I made connections with other parents who share that interest with me, and then you arrange hangouts, like you arrange things and plans and you hang out and you do things together. So my suggestion there is, and I will continue to do this, pick your interest, pick an activity that you like to do. Pick, like by interest I mean like something like barefoot shoes or baby carrying or cloth diapering or whatever it is, and then just like go to an activity that is about that, and you're likely to meet other people that are interested in that activity, and maybe you'll become friends and maybe it will extend past that activity. And if it doesn't, you still went and did a cool activity that is related to an interest that you have. So an openness to relationship, but not an expectation that I'm gonna walk away from that thing having 5 friends. Now moving on from that, another one that is underrated but also sometimes overused, so it's a balanced one, is community where it is hired help. We have a tendency in our modern society to be extremists when it comes to hired help, where we will pay to outsource functions like in totality and almost have like an over-reliance on that and take away from even offering it to in-person relationships. Or we swing the other way to like no hired help and never paying anybody to do anything to help us, where I believe the value lies in the balance. With Elba, I had a planned home birth. And the closer it got to my birth, the more I felt like I needed a specific person in my birth space other than the midwife. So I felt like she was not really fulfilling what I wanted for my birth space. I'm a big believer of like wise women and women who have given birth in your space. So that's why I didn't want Ian to be like the main person who is responsible for how my birth goes. Like he played a very important role in it, but like I really had this desire for a woman who has birthed and who has that wisdom. So for Elba's birth, because we didn't have community, like I knew exactly who I would have asked if we were still back in South Africa, but because I was here, I didn't like have somebody that I could ask, so I paid for it and we hired a doula, which was like invaluable to my birthing experience. Like anybody who asks me, I am such an advocate for like the doula that we had made all the difference to my birthing experience. Now, having said that, I do not intend to use a doula for this birth. And that is because I have now had the opportunity to be more picky with my midwife, which I did not have with Elba. And I have also established community of people in my life who think birth is wonderful, who have experienced birth, who are very comfortable around other women giving birth and all the things. They are very close to Elba, which is important. So I have extended the invitation rather to people in my life, more than one person, because otherwise it also puts a lot of pressure on one person, because birth is unpredictable and you don't know when it's going to happen, and they also have like their own things and children and so forth. Instead of using hired help this time, even though that was so invaluable, I am going to opt instead to use my in-person community for this one. The other one is that I do not have family around who can come like hang out with Elba if there is some stuff I need to do around the house. And this was particularly important when my husband was ill and I needed to do a lot more in our home than I had ever done before, is I hired what I call a place sitter. It's not an actual babysitter, it's not like an au pair. It's not someone who is responsible for her like physical needs or emotional needs. It's someone who literally comes to our house to play with her for 2 hours twice a week while I'm in the house. And it's been beautiful because it's a place sitter dynamic. So this is what I'm saying, it's not all or nothing. It is cheaper than what you would pay for like a proper child care person. And also it is giving an opportunity to somebody who is a little bit younger and has less experience to gain that experience over time and to really hone in on a skill that they love. And it's also wonderful because part of what a village used to be is, and part of what it is for people who live around their family members that I don't have, given our choice to live like literally across the world from my family, which is like, as you can see, it's creeping on the time now where I'm starting to feel a bit like frustrated about that. Whenever I go on like really long strips without seeing anybody from my family, I start to get a bit like, yeah. Anyway, Elba does not have exposure to lots of people of different ages the way that other people who live around their family would, because they would typically have cousins or siblings or something where you are really exposed to a variety of ages. Now Elba doesn't naturally have that, so I create that for her through the friendships that we make and then hanging out with their families, and then also through her place sitter. Her place sitter is someone who is not like a full 30-year-old adult, but it's also not another child that is playing with her, and she gets that exposure to someone of a different age, which is valuable in our growth and our development. So the point I'm trying to make there is that hired help can be creative. It does not have to be like an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be your child goes to daycare or they don't go to daycare. There's middle grounds with that. It doesn't need to be hire a doula or don't hire a doula. There's middle grounds with that as well. So for example, this time I won't have a doula, but I am still thinking about hiring that person for like a closing of the 40-day ceremony or something like that. Right, then the other one is an openness to your physical community. So where we live is very standalone houses, and that doesn't create for the most community orientation. However, we do live in an older community, so a lot of the people here are very acquainted with each other, and a lot of them are a lot older than us, like as in most of them have grandkids that are Elba's age. So these are not people that you will typically think of as becoming your friends. However, they are part of your village and your community, and people here have offered stuff like, oh, if you ever need a tool for that, like feel free to knock on my door. A lot of the people in our physical surrounding are retired. A lot of them have also got time and enjoy spending time the way that very busy people may not want to. So it's also been really nice for Elba to spend time with people of an older generation, given that again she is not exposed to my grandparents because we live so far away. It's been a variety of things, from like gifts that we have received from them, like physical gifts, and it's not about the gift, it's just like it feels so nice when someone, like when then one of the neighbors heard that I was pregnant, she came and dropped off like a box of chocolates and honey, and there was something else, can't remember what it was, but it just feels so nice where someone's like, oh, I thought of you, I put this package together and I'm bringing it to you. Like, it's a really nice feeling. Like, it's not about the physical thing. Stuff like that feels really nice. They have offered to help, to say, hey, listen, if you need anything, we're right here. You know, you can trust we're right here if you need some help with Elba or if you need help with anything else. And it's really nice, and we can choose how we receive that. We can either just politely nod, or we can actually say, yeah, you know what, if given the opportunity, let's lean on that, because people like want to help other people for the most part. Like when we are doing the things that fill up our own cup, for the most part, generally speaking, people really enjoy doing things for other people, and I think we rob each other of that experience when someone's offering something and we just sort of see it as like a polite gesture without actually taking them up on that offer. And then the final one that I want to talk about is the use of virtual communities. Now, like I said, when I gave birth to Elba, I did not have a physical community. I did not have the women in my life be close to me that I would have wanted for that experience. So what I did was I created a virtual WhatsApp group around the birth, and throughout the birth I spoke about what I would really appreciate in terms of support, words of encouragement, send a song, like send a quote. One person sent like a YouTube video to a mile circuit that sort of really helped in my labor, and Ian sent updates the whole time on that labor group, like it's going like this, the midwife just showed up, this. And do you know how beautiful it is to involve people in your birth? Because that's how people used to birth back in the day. We didn't like run off to the hospital where nobody sees it except the doctor and one other person. Like, birth was a community experience. And while it is a very vulnerable act that we don't want to put on show, necessarily, I don't want to put my birth on show, I cannot explain to you the value of inviting people virtually into that space, given that we now have the technology and the tools to do that. For the rest of my life, I will remember how meaningful that group was, and how, like, in a time where usually you would feel so lonely and so isolated, especially living so far from everybody else in the middle of Canadian winter, having just had a baby, like everything about my life changed. I didn't feel alone. I felt like I had community, because it wasn't just sending cutesy little photos of Elba. It was sharing the raw and the real of my birth in real time and opening that up for support from people from afar. And I am a big advocate for, if we don't want to feel alone, to give people the opportunity to be invited into our lives. Even if it cannot be physical, there's lots of ways that we can now virtually establish that. Okay, and that brings me to more or less the end of that. The other thing that we can do is that I do share a lot of my life on social media. Now, this is not for everybody, but I am not somebody who is very personal. Like, I really enjoy sharing information. I really have no, I don't feel like, I don't have secrets. I don't have anything like that. So it's very easy and very natural for me to want to share loads on social media, and I love doing that. And through doing that, you invite a lot of things that may be difficult into your life, but I have experienced overwhelmingly much more wonderful things. And I don't put a curated life out there. I just put the raw, the real out there, and I've connected with people who that resonates with. So over the years, I have really felt like I have a sense of community on there that does not replace my in-person community. It does not at all replace real in-person relationships that I have, because that would be concerning. It is something that is enriching on top of establishing all of the other things. And a lot of the time, those relationships became in-person friends when it was practical to do so. So there's a way for us to use social media and the technology at our disposal, which is so life enriching, but it should not replace real relationships that we have in person. And that's my video on how to create your village, and to really create a village of quality relationships. And this, like I said at the beginning of the video, is an ongoing experience for me. There are different phases of my life where I put a lot more effort into establishing community, or then maintaining community, or being more open to different things, or times that I want to focus on other things. And I honor all of that with always having the intentionality to really want to put out into the world the life that feels wonderful. What kind of behaviors do I want to put out into the world? And I am so far from embodying that, but I know that every day with that intention and awareness, I become closer to doing that. And every time that I live my more authentic, more compassionate, more open self, I literally just see how relationships come out of nowhere. And in this last week, I made like 3 new connections that I'm so incredibly excited about. Like literally just talking about things that interest me and excite me, and putting myself out there with an openness to the other person as well. So I hope that this is helpful for you on your journey. And I would love it if you subscribe and you like and you comment. And I am excited to share more about how we prep and we plan, given that we don't have a traditional village, but how we are also relying on and asking for from our village as we go through pregnancy again, and birth, a new baby, and all of those things. Now with a slightly different experience because we've been here a little bit longer. Thank you so much for joining me.